Hey guys, I'm launching a new book this week and I wanted to try something a little bit different, which means I'm going to be putting up this video on YouTube and I'll probably cross-post it to a couple spots. And basically, I'm going to be doing a reading of my own book. I'm going to probably do the first chapter in this video, I might do the second chapter, and we're going to see what you guys think as we go along. I have no idea if you want to listen to me read this, but we'll see. Now, this particular novel is Holy Ground. This is a story that my readers will recognize being referenced in some of the mainline Odyssey 1 books. However, it is not interstellar space daring do. It is World War III. That doesn't mean there's no sci-fi elements. Again, my readers will know there is science fiction, there is speculative fiction, speculative technologies in pretty much all of my works. However, we're going to be much closer to the modern day. The setting is 2078. No, I did not choose that date because of Cyberpunk 2077. Just a weird one. There are some references in here to pop culture. That was not one of them, oddly enough. So we're going to be doing a quick reading of Chapter 1 of Holy Ground. So, Chapter 1. Kitakyoshu. I know I pronounced that wrong. Kita-Kyushu, Japan, 2078. Jonathan Mad Jack Hadrian took a deep pull from the bottle of Jibiru in his hand, savoring the taste of the high-proof local beer as he looked over the beach and the waters of the bay, and the sea of Japan beyond. It had been a lovely day, the sun beating down on the city as he relaxed as best he could while keeping watch on his little cadre of baby Marines, who were availing themselves of the local hospitality. For his sins, he'd been promoted, and now was the gunny to a bunch of wet-behind-the-ears recruits. It could be worse, he supposed, though for the life of him he doubted the difference could be that bad. At least his service hadn't been considered superfluous to the needs of the Corps, like many others in recent times. Years of overspending, incredible waste, and a national debt topping 100 trillion had finally made the government start thinking about cuts. As usual, the Corps was one of the first on the chopping block. Jack didn't have any real complaints, though. He'd had a good run in the Corps, raised a little hell, put a lot of it down for the count. He'd probably voluntarily retire in a little while and get his DD-214 and call it a career. He wasn't a young man anymore, and roping young, dumb Marines for the job for younger and dumber men than he. He just hoped that he'd managed to talk some sense into his kid the last time he'd been home. His bright-eyed little boy had told him that he wanted to enlist when he grew up. It had been one of the best and worst moments of his life. Jack loved his Corps, but there was no future in it for a young man, not anymore. The Corps, and the military in general, were in their declining years. It happened to every empire eventually, it was just the way of things. The money wasn't there anymore to keep growing the services. Hell, it wasn't there just to maintain them properly. They did what they could with what they had, but it was telling just how many pieces of gear he had back at base, half torn down to provide parts that kept the rest running. Bah, enough of this melancholy bullshit, Jack thought as he hammered down the last of the beer and got to his feet. The warm sun was now dropping in the west, casting the island of Tsushima in silhouette. Heat haze from the water made it all shimmer in the distance, dancing in place as he made his way down the walk to where his baby Marines were lounging on the beach. Thankfully, they'd not tried to play too much grab ass with the locals this time around. He didn't need that level of bullshit once they got back to base. But at the same time, the hairs on the back of his neck went up every time this bunch behaved themselves. Thankfully, it was almost time for the final roundup of the day, and tomorrow all he'd have to worry about was keeping them in line while they were doing their duties. "Hey, Gunny," one of the babies grinned at him from the beach as he walked by. "Having a good time?" Jack snorted. "Carlson, watching over you bunch is like having hemorrhoids. It's not always painful, but it ain't ever a good time." He kept walking as the private sputtered and snorted in his wake, the sand of the beach squeaking under his boots. He needed to stretch the stiffness out of his legs before they got back onto the bus for the run back to base. Lights were starting to show out in the water, he noted, though the sun was still high enough to wash most things out. He paused, lifting his hand to cover the sun as he peered into the distance. Jack knew that South Korea was out there, just over the horizon, and the strait between them was one of the most heavily trafficked waterways on the planet, with thousands of ships and boats out there at any given time. He didn't think most of them would have running lights as bright as he was seeing, though. A flash in the distance briefly washed out the sun itself, leaving him blinking and automatically counting off the seconds in his head as he waited for the thunderclap to hit. Lightning wasn't unusual in these parts, and that had been over the horizon, he was pretty sure. So he didn't think too much about it, despite the automatic response. After 10 seconds, he stopped counting. The storm was far enough away that it wasn't going to have any effect on his day. Time to round up the babies, Jack decided, turning back away from the water and starting back up the beach. All right, you leathernecks. Grab your socks and clear the rocks from your skulls. Time to head back to paradise. The men groaned, complaining automatically, but they were already moving even as they did so. Come on, Gunny, give us a few more minutes. Jerry, if I gave you a few more days, you'd still wind up begging me for just a little more. Get your ass in gear. Jack rolled his eyes as he walked up between the slowly moving men. Coming to a stop in front of a corporal who wasn't moving. What the hell is wrong with you, Marine? Lose your balls in the sand? Get moving! Corporal Brian Meir had an odd look on his face, and his gaze looked out over Jack's shoulder. Gunny, he said slowly, those don't look like fishing boats. Jack felt a chill, one that had nothing to do with the temperature. The tone of the corporal's voice had triggered something he'd not felt in a long time, not since he last played in the sandbox. He slowly turned his head, shifting on his heel, bringing the water back into view. What in the fuck? He breathed out, eyes refocusing on the bright lights that were much closer now, closer than they had any business being. How fast are they moving? They couldn't be boats. There wasn't a boat on the planet that could cross that distance so short a time. Jesus Christ, Gunny, they're flying. Jack didn't turn around to see which of his baby Marines had just spouted the obvious. He was more focused on the colors the unbelievably large and low-flying aircraft were showing. The red flag painted on their sides, decorated by a circle of white stars. Sweet Jesus, what the hell are the block up to? They can't be this crazy. He grabbed the phone from his pocket, thumbing into the system and trying to call out, only to find that he had no signal. That was something that didn't surprise him as much as it would have a few minutes earlier. Gunny Jack spun on his heel, his posture changing as he stopped being the semi-relaxed figure from moments earlier and became a Marine Corps gunny in every facet save his actual uniform. Move your asses, Marines! He bellowed as he flipped the phone over to radio transmission mode. Triple time it to the bus, and I'll have the hide of anyone damn fool enough to have the audacity to miss a step. His Marines didn't talk back this time. They were all in motion before he finished bellowing. This is Gunnery Sergeant Hadrian, he said into the phone. I'm transmitting in the open. Any points copying this, get your ass back to base and report for duty. I don't care if you just started a month-long leave, it's canceled. Say again, report to your duty stations or to the closest base for assignment. He was in motion by then, chasing his Marines up the beach towards the short bus they'd used to get to Kyushu from Iwakuni. He didn't know if anyone had gotten his call. Cell jamming wouldn't do much to the radio in his phone, but if the block had bothered to jam one, then they'd have probably gotten everything. Wide-spectrum jamming was tough to pull off, though. He was all too aware of that, and with some luck, a few would have gotten the signal. He just hoped it made a difference. Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni. Major Wolf hit the tarmac running, alarms shaking the air of the base from every direction. He didn't know what the fuck was going on, but he hoped to hell it wasn't some demented drill, because if it was, he was going to find whichever idiot paper pusher thought it up and express his displeasure in person. He reached his F-35 in seconds, halfway up the ladder to the cockpit before the flight crew even noticed him. Sir! Wolf dropped into the Ace's 6 seat and was reaching for the straps as he looked back out. Tell me we're ready to fly, Kimmy. Gunny Kimberly Johnson nodded instantly. Hot to trot, Major. You're running an air intercept package. Keep that in mind. Turbines are good, tanks are full. Good work, Gunny, he said, pulling his helmet on and plugging the oxygen mask into the aircraft's air pump outlet. You got any info on what's going on? Not a thing, she shook her head. Alarm started screaming, and the only order I've got is get you in the air ASAP. Well, let's not keep them running, Wolf said. Well, let's not keep them waiting, Wolf said, waving her back. Get clear. You got it, Major. Good hunting. He just nodded as the canopy descended around him, snapping his mask into place as he reached over to flip on the radio. Green Knight's ready response, Squadron, he called. Green Knight actual. Lycan speaking. Chime in. Night 3, Hoover here. Night 5, Eagle up. Night 2, Paladin, fires hot. Night 4, Silver Bullet ready. Night 6, Dragon burning. Let's do this. Roger that, Knights, Wolf said as he felt his turbine wind to life. Tower, this is Green Knight Actual, requesting taxi directions. Negative on taxi directions, Major. You're cleared for immediate VTOL. Wolf blinked, momentarily shocked by that. VTOL was hardly authorized when they had a nice long runway available. Among other things, it was a lot harder on fuel than a normal takeoff, not to mention somewhat riskier. Since it was also a lot more fun, however, he wasn't about to complain. Roger that, Tower. Green Knights, ready squadron, lifting off. VTOL, he said, flipping to the squadron frequency. You heard them, boys and girls. Let's get these pigs in the air. He reached forward, pulling the controls that vectored the thrust of the F-35 all the way back, and felt the vibrations through the seat as the big exhaust vectoring system was twisted into place. The squadron checked in, and they were doing the same as he applied power to the system. And the shaking intensified around him for a moment before the F-35 released itself from the ground and the Green Knight Actual began to creep above the roofs of the nearby buildings. Around him, the Green Knights were matching him, the ready squadron lifting uncertainly into the air as they stood on the narrow plume of exhaust and seemed barely managing to balance. A few dozen feet over the tarmac, Wolf began pushing the lever forward again, lifting the nose as he got the fighter balanced on the exhaust like a demented ballet dancer on tiptoes. Slowly, the F-35 began to creep forward, climbing inch by inch as full power exploded out the rear, and he finished the transition from liftoff to flight. Roaring out over Hiroshima Bay, Wolf checked the computer and finally started to get some information on what the hell was going down. Contacts from the west. Alright, let's get oriented first and then find out exactly what the hell is happening. He looped around Kabuto Island, still gaining altitude, and brought the squadron back around to the west. They cut across land, south of the city, pouring on the power and breaking Mach just before the Gantuku line. Wolf barely noticed. He was too busy talking. Command, Lycan, give me the sit rep. Lycan, command. Contacts across the sea as of 1700 local time. Wide spectrum jamming, all stations. Air contacts are presumed hostile, having refused all attempts to identify or redirect. Mission priority is to confirm identities of the bogey contacts, turn them back from mainland Japan. Second mission, should first mission prove untenable, provide cover for local JSDF and US forces as they wind up response. Understood, Wolf said. Green Knights moving on station. Intercept contacts in 3. Roger that, Lycan. Good luck, good hunting. Kita Kyushu. Jack Hadrian flinched down as the shadow passed over him, flickering along so fast he'd almost missed it. The boom hit a moment later, shaking him and everything around him. He looked up, watching the aircraft scream away, frowning as he was unable to recognize the configuration. It definitely wasn't one of the block's normal frontline aircraft. He knew those profiles like he knew his own hands. All points, Gunnery Sergeant Hadrian, he said into his phone, broadcasting still in the open, hoping somebody was getting it. What looks like combat aircraft with block livery is in control of the air over Kyushu. Unknown profile. Say again, unknown profile. These are not standard block aircraft. He hoped somebody was getting the signal, but it didn't matter as to what he had to do. Reaching the bus, he pocketed his phone and threw the side door open, standing there and slapping his Marines on the back as they piled in. Jack made sure he had the head count right before he climbed in himself and nodded to the driver. Get us back to base, he said curtly. You got it, Gunny, the corporal said, pulling the door shut and stepping on the accelerator. The electric bus whirred away from the curb, only making the officially authorized vehicle noise for a Marine transport in a civilian area. Jack held on to the vertical bar by the driver's seat, looking back over the Marines. All right, guys, he said. Don't know what's going on yet, but it's safe to assume it's not a good thing. We're going to hightail it back to the base so we can get our orders. Hoorah! Hoorah! He nodded, satisfied at that, turned back around to lean into the driver. Get us out of the city as fast as you can and keep an eye on the skies. Hoorah, Gunny! Traffic was a snarl, more so than usual, which didn't surprise Jack in the slightest. Chaos was beginning to erupt as the local civilians got the idea that something was amiss. Most probably didn't have any idea what, but they were stopping and staring or trying to run off to somewhere or another, and generally just getting in each other's and his way. He pointed. Cut over the sidewalk there. You got it, Gunny, the corporal grinned, laying on the horn as he turned the wheel. They bumped over the sidewalk, cut off a sedan, and got onto the on-ramp for the highway. Jack just hoped it got better once they were clear of the city. FL-25 over Yamaguchi Prefecture. The Green Knights were quickly joined by Japanese Self-Defense Force F-35s and F-22s, along with U.S. Air Force Squadron sorting out of Okada. Wolf plugged his squadron into the joint of formation, linking up to the battle network, and generally just got ready for whatever was coming their way. Forward radar sweeps were showing fast-moving contacts all up and down the coast. A lot where they might be expected, but he was seeing a lot right down on the deck moving fast for the coastline. Has everyone seen those fast movers down low? He asked over the command frequency. Anyone have any idea what we're looking at there? They can't be ships, can they? Negative, Lycan, an Air Force captain, call sign Squealer, a name Wolf both did and did not want to know how he'd gotten, responded. We're showing them making 350 knots plus. No surface contact makes that kind of speed. Not at that size. They are very low for an aircraft, however, the JSDF major interjected. We have no reliable contact on the ground that can see them. This jamming is very aggravating. You're not wrong there, Wolf agreed. Do we have no contact with the coastal spotters? Nothing solid, Squealer confirmed. There are intermittent broadcasts from different units, but the jamming seems to be adaptive. They get cut off again every time they manage to break through. Great. Well, nothing to it, Wolf said. We're loaded for the air contacts. Green Knights provide cover to anyone who'd like to get a closer look at those skimmer contacts, especially if you're loaded for bear and can ruin their day. Roger that, Green Knights, Squealer said. Panthers, I see you're packing some ground support ordnance. You want to take a look at those contacts? You got it, Squealer, Captain Gordon High-Rise Decker said. Happy to serve. Lycan, take your Knights and cover the Panthers, Squealer ordered. We're going to see about making those skies friendly. Hoorah, Squealer, you heard the man, Knights. On me. The Knights peeled out of formation, dropping in a roll as they turned to provide cap and cover for the Panthers as the Air Force dropped and made for the coast. And that is Chapter 1 of Holy Ground. I have no idea if my reading is any good. If you guys enjoyed it, I will see about doing Chapter 2 sometime in the next couple of days. The book itself is already up for pre-sale. I will put the link down in the description below. If you like this, well, you know where the like button is, you know where to subscribe, you know how to ring the bell. If there is demand, I will do this more often. So, alright guys, have a good one. I hope you guys are all safe and sound, and I am going to sign off right now. Cheers.